Lakeside Secondary College is in Reservoir, for people who don't know. It's right on the western side of Reservoir. Has about 400 students at the moment. We're in a regeneration group with Marylands and Ruthven, and next year Marylands VCE students will become Lakeside VCE students. And so we're sort of in a sort of growth situation. But that regeneration situation has had like a number of impacts on our sort of the processes we've gone through with staff and staff feelings and things like that, as the Hume Central people mentioned last week. Now, we started in the program slightly differently to anybody else who's done AIZ. Ramon's group at La Trobe approached a number of schools at the end of 2006 to be involved in a study that they were conducting, and we took up that invitation to be involved. We already had student engagement and wellbeing, and therefore behaviour management as a part of that, and we also had literacy and numeracy as part of our strategic plan and a part of our annual implementation plan. The principal and the assistant principal at the time were really, really keen for us to be involved in this, but they initiated the program and took it to the leadership team, who were also very supportive, then took it to a staff meeting and the staff agreed. And that's sort of a really big step for us, that the staff actually saw a need, and because they saw a need, they were prepared to take it on board right from the beginning. The next group that I've got there, the level coordinators, were supportive. That's also has been really, really crucial for us. And looking back, the fact that the level coordinators were keen and were supportive has been really important, because even though they've varied in the amount of change that they've been able to make in a short period of time, just getting behind it and believing in the need for change has been the trigger for them spending time thinking about it. They've actually been the people who have had to change their work practices the most, because when in our school, when somebody had a problem with a student, it was often the level coordinator who sorted out that problem. So for the level coordinators to change their style of work, and I guess in primary schools that would be assistant principals or principals. I'm not quite sure who deals with that, but they've actually had to pull back but still be supportive, and so that's actually changed their role. So having had all that agreement, we then started PD sessions with Ramon. They were primarily 2-hour sessions that were after school, where we sort of sometimes finish a bit earlier and sort of do our 2-hour sessions. Sometimes just were 2-hour sessions tacked on to the end of the day. But they took us through all the things that Ramon has done with the AIZ. Explaining all the research behind it, explaining the rationale behind it, and then getting into really training people, giving people the type of language they need to use, and then role-playing that language, giving people the opportunity to have conversations in little triads, except we never called them triads because that freaks people out a bit. And so you always had an observer who could comment on your conversation and all of those sorts of things. Then we needed to change some processes and some practices at work to be able to make the system consistent. It's still got glitches, of course, but the level coordinators and the AP formed a team, and that the focus of that team at the time was sort of uncertain, but their focus became primarily to work on these changes in process. So we have a system of, when students are allowed to be, or when it's considered a big enough misdemeanour that students are exited from class. So, and there's little slips, the blue slip that you get when you're exited. So the process needed to be reorganised and the slip needed to be reorganised. The process needed to be reorganised because students no longer reported. They no longer got exited to a spot where they just sat to be followed up by the level coordinator later on. They were redirected, they went to the office, and they were redirected to a senior class where they sat in the back. They had the sheet that Ramon was talking about before, the think sheet, to fill out and report on how they felt. Hopefully not just saying she hates me and that's why she exited me. But there was to be no judgment made at that time. There was no discussion by anybody else. The office staff are really nice, and they just, sent the kid to somewhere else. The teacher who they were sent to didn't say anything or follow up, and then the student then, using the Ramon system, the student then needed to organise a meeting and have a conversation with the teacher who exited them. So that exit process had to be planned.